I made a little May. 3.65 pounds per week lost on CICO. There's a point where we needed to stop, and we have clearly passed it. But let's keep going and see what happens. Well, I'll tell you what'll happen. If I actually did this, I'd probably fall apart and want to kill myself from how rigorous this is. But in reality, it ain't going to happen because I do things on the weekday. I see friends, I like to go out and eat, especially the weekend. There ain't no way that I'm doing this 7 days a week. Not when weekends exist. So this won't really happen, but it's a good starting point. So, anatomy of a work week built around losing weight while still having weekends out with friends. So this is a calories in, calories out approach. This is what a day looks like following CICO, exercising, getting the nutrition I need, and losing weight. So if you're interested in losing weight without doing anything crazy, then this might be of interest to you. So essentially, weight loss is all based on your calorie balance per day, per week, per month. 3,500 calories is a pound of fat, so if you have a negative deficit, a deficit of 3,500 calories, then you'll lose a pound of fat. Whether you get that in a day or a week or a month, doesn't matter. It's just math. So here I've broken down my statistics for the day, and then I've extrapolated that to say, hey, what would it look like if I did that for 7 days, which is a week? So we take the calories in, which is what we consume, like food. I don't know what else you would be consuming that would have calories. And then you subtract your calories out, which is generally speaking your active energy, which is your exercise usually, and your total daily energy expenditure. So in my case, today I ate 1,225 calories. Now, that's really low. That's way less than just about any adult male should eat to maintain their current weight. If you just ate 1,225 calories a day, you would eventually starve to death and die because you would just keep shrinking and losing body fat until you lost all your fat, and then your organs would start eating themselves alive and you would have organ failure and die. Woohoo! But obviously we're not trying to kill ourselves here, so you wouldn't do this once you'd lost however much fat you wanted to lose. Then you would start ramping up the amount of food that you're eating. So my total daily energy expenditure is calculated by taking into account my age, gender, height, body weight, and I've calculated my total daily energy expenditure to be somewhere around 1,850. In reality, it's probably a little higher, but I'm just calling it 1850. And then I ran 12 miles today, so we can see here that Apple Health says that I burned 1,359 calories from exercise. Well, that's probably not accurate. That's probably an over-exaggeration. In reality, I ran a little over 12 miles, and I'm just going to say that I burned 100 calories per mile, which is about what the Apple Watch estimates, and that uses heart rate information plus all of my other bodily statistics. So while wearable calorie estimates have been notoriously incorrect for as long as they've existed, they have gotten better, and I think generally speaking 100 calories per mile ran while you're running is probably somewhat accurate. I've done a lot of backwards calculations with my historical data, and it's generally plus or minus 20%, which is, when it comes to wearable calculations, that's pretty darn accurate. All right, so anyway, let's say you want to lose a lot of weight, but you don't want to do fasting, because I've done fasting. I do 36-hour fasts. I've done 64-hour fasts. I did a 120-hour fast. So that's 1.5, 3, and 5 days respectively fast. So I've just gone and not eaten for days in a row before. But Lately, I haven't really been liking doing that because it really messes with my running. And besides losing weight, I have other goals. One of my other goals is that I want to be able to run 60 miles a week. That's 60. So if I have 4 more days like this, that's 5 times 12. That's 60 days, or rather, 60 miles. So if Monday through Friday I managed to do 2 6-mile runs a day, that would get me to 60 miles in a week. Now, I'm not off to a good start because yesterday it was raining cats and dogs and I only ran 8.5 miles on the indoor gym treadmill, although my watch wasn't measuring it correctly and it only measured it as 5 miles. The treadmill said 8.5. I don't really care. But, as long as I run on the weekend, I'll definitely hit 60 miles this week. So I'm happy about that. So we've talked about the exercise. For me, that's running twice a day. I like to run for about an hour before work starts and then run for about an hour when work gets off. That's 2 hours of running in a day. That gets me to 12 miles and that burns about 1,200 calories, which is quite a lot because there's small women who need less than 1,200 calories a day. Like my total daily energy expenditure is 1,850 because I'm a 5'7" male, but a 4'11" female might not even need 1,200 calories in a day just to exist. So 1,200 calories burned from exercise is a lot. I don't care who you are, how big you are, even if you're 6 foot something, it's a lot. So that's one of the reasons why I really like running. I can really crank out the calories with that. Okay, food. What did I eat today? Well, I had 3 salads at about 200 calories a pop with some homemade dressing. I have a short on my YouTube channel where it's 15 seconds long and I show the dressing in the blender and then I hit the blend button. Honestly, it looks disgusting. It tastes amazing. I love it. And I'm going to be making some more in a day or two. And one of my videos I'd like to do is just a step-by-step recipe of me making the dressing. Is it the best dressing in the world? Hell no. I like the way it tastes though. It tastes good enough that it makes me actually want to eat the salad. So when I get hungry, I think, man, a salad sounds good. That's the thing. If I can make myself want to eat these 200 calorie salads, then that's very good because these salads keep me full and satiated and happy for 2 to 3 hours. I was eating 3+ pound salads and those would keep me full for 3 hours, 4 hours maybe. Instead now what I've been doing this week is I've been having much smaller 200 calorie or so salads and they only keep me full for like 2 hours before I start getting peckish again. But overall, instead of nearly 500 calories in a salad, it's more like about 200 calories per salad and it gives me about 6 hours. See, these 3 salads will give me about 6 hours of satiation. It can just about get me through the workday, which is what happened today. I was able to get myself through the workday and finish with this nice dessert, and that was all I needed to eat today. Now, what's not shown here is I had quite a lot of coffee. I had 4 cups of coffee, and that is significant for one reason. So I only put in, I had half a cup of milk and some flax milk, so that's like, I don't know, 80 calories. Not really that many calories. But the caffeine from coffee is a hunger suppressant. So somewhere in between, I think it was after the second salad, I just plowed through 4 cups of coffee. I used my brand new coffee machine. It's one of those paper filter gizmos. It keeps the coffee hot in a big pot. I really like it because it can brew 4 cups of coffee. And so I think after salad number 2, so it must have been between these two, I had 4 cups of coffee, and that caffeine helped me stay focused for work. I was able to really crank out the productivity, and the staying busy with the work, and the caffeine helped keep the hunger at bay. But anyway, so I had 3 salads that were nearly identical. I put some mushrooms and bell peppers in here. The bell peppers don't really add much from a nutrition point of view, so if you want to reduce this 269 to maybe 220, 230, just cut the bell peppers, but the mushrooms are excellent. Mushrooms provide protein and they provide a lot of potassium. Potassium is important. You want potassium. So cut the bell peppers, but keep the mushrooms. So that's essentially 3 kale salads, each one with this homemade dressing I made that's primarily Greek yogurt. It's like 600 grams of Greek yogurt, 3 tins of anchovies, some other stuff, mustard, blended up, made 9 servings, about 110, 115 calories per pop of this serving. I think it was like 108, 110 grams of dressing per serving. Mix that in with the kale. It's perfect. It's just enough to cover the kale to make each bite tasty, but not too much so that I'm just adding extra calories for no reason. And it's just tasty enough that it actually makes me want to eat the salads. This is the second day in a row where I've had 3 salads and I really like them. They're delicious. You just really have, when it comes to weight loss and finding a sustainable diet you can commit to that will help you lose weight and be okay with a calorie deficit, you really just have to experiment and find out the foods that work for you. And for me, it's this random Caesar dressing I just made up that's primarily Greek yogurt on kale. For me, it's working wonders. I'm going to be doing it for the rest of the week. I'll probably get tired of it, but not tired of it yet. So after work today, I had my 3rd salad. No, actually, no, I went for a run and then I had the salad. I watched some TV, kind of mellow out. I did have an urge to go to my local food truck that sells fried, spicy Nashville chicken tenders and curly fries covered in honey. It's delicious. But I resisted the urge because, as delicious as it is, I didn't feel like undoing the hard work that I'm putting in here. So thinking about where I'm going to be in a week or a month helped keep me on track. And then I made this bowl instead, which was probably like 2 pounds of food. It's pretty insane how much food you can really make when you put together a lot of low-calorie ingredients. So this was, I don't know, half a cup of Greek yogurt, a cup of flax milk, a cup of milk mixed with Jell-O powder, an apple that was diced up, 16 grams of kamut, which is some kind of puffed rice that I got from this weirdo vegan health website, but it's very good because it's a lot of mass for only a little bit of calories. And that was a delicious way to end the day. Now you will notice that these salads are about 200 calories a piece, whereas this dessert bowl was 458 or so. But if you look at the macros, we can see why. These were all, 22, 12, 13 net carbs. This was 54 net carbs. These were all, I don't know, on average 21 or 22 grams of protein per bowl. This was like 50% more protein. And these all had like 7 or 8 grams of fat. This had like 50% more, like 10 grams of fat. So I ended my day on a decadent note, but boy, was that tasty. Oh, and that's right. I've been struggling to get my iron nutrient for a while. So one of my hacks to get a lot of iron is cocoa powder. Cocoa powder can have a lot of iron depending on the brand that you buy. I got this 5-pound bag of cocoa powder from Hershey's. It's ridiculously plain looking, but it's got iron in it. And I put 31 grams of cocoa powder in there. I mixed that into the yogurt, and that made a really dry chocolatey yogurt that I used for the base of this bowl. And I love that like bittersweet chocolate taste. And that 31 grams of cocoa gave me almost all of the iron that I need for the day. And I really need iron because if you do a lot of sports, you go through blood cells faster, and your body also just needs more iron to repair your tissue. Oh, it's for the blood cells too. So cocoa powder, I'm using that to get my extra iron that I need for the day. But anyway, ran 12 miles, ran an hour in the morning, ran an hour in the evening, ate 3 salads, had 4 cups of coffee, and a yogurt bowl. We can see here that my deficit for the day is 1,825 calories, which is pretty freaking massive. This is one of the biggest deficits that I've had in quite a while. My total daily energy expenditure is 1,850 calories, and I'm sitting at negative 1,825 calories. In fact, that is That seems almost incorrect. What? So positive 1225, because that's what I ate. Okay. Then I burned 1850 from literally just being alive, which puts me at like negative 600 or so. And then I burned another 12. Yeah, negative 1800. So my body needs 1800 or so calories just to exist. And I'm at negative double that for the day. So this is a very large calorie deficit, way, way, way larger than what anyone would recommend. Do not do this without a lot of education and probably consulting a professional or someone who's done a ton of research and thinks they know what they're doing, like myself. Because if you run a deficit like this without actually tracking your macros, it's an easy way to get organ failure fast. Maybe not that fast, but I've heard of like high school girls who, or it could be boys too, but I've heard of people that, you know, they want to lose weight really quickly, which is, hey, that's me, but I've heard of people that want to lose weight really quickly, and so they just drink orange juice or, I don't know, do only apples or something, and then they end up missing a bunch of nutrients and they get like heart failure and they end up in the hospital. So this is an extremely high deficit, and if you weren't actually paying attention to the food that you're eating, you could definitely put yourself on the fast track for a nutrient deficiency. So when I track my calories and foods in my diary, one of the things I always keep in mind is what are my daily and my weekly nutrients looking like. So one of the reasons why I always have mushrooms in my salads, or at least I have a serving of mushrooms every day, like at least, is because I noticed that for quite a while my potassium intake was lower than it should have been. And so I use mushrooms to help me get potassium. Mushrooms have like twice as much potassium as bananas per calorie. So if you're looking for a way to lose weight but still get your potassium requirement, mushrooms in my book are just about the best thing you could possibly eat. Not to mention the fact that they're high volume for the amount of calories that you're getting. Like that means they're just physically large, they're cheap. You know, it's like an ice cube or something. It's a lot of stuff, but almost no calories. And they have protein. So mushrooms are good. As I was saying before, I've been having trouble hitting my iron nutrient goal. So I packed a bunch of cocoa powder into my dessert. And in reality, it's okay if you don't hit your nutrient requirements every day. What matters more is your weekly totals. If every week you're more or less hitting the mark, then you're fine. And the RDAs, you don't really need to hit the RDAs, but you should be getting like at least half the RDAs. And I'm sure the doctor would say you should be getting more than half the RDA, but they're called the RDA because they're just recommended. It's going to be different for every person. What's important for me, though, is making sure that I get at least a certain amount of protein. And so here, let's look at the macro breakdown. So earlier I was saying, hey, this is an insanely high deficit. You shouldn't just run a deficit like this willy-nilly. You could easily you could injure yourself, you could hurt yourself, you could end up in the hospital. So how am I able to run a deficit like this without wanting to kill myself from the stress or the discomfort? Well, so first of all, I'm not uncomfortable at all right now. I'm about to go brush my teeth and go to bed, and I feel fantastic. But it certainly took me almost all year to get to the point where I could pull something off like this and feel fine. So let's talk about the macro breakdown, and then we'll talk a little bit more about like why I don't want to kill myself. Because I think if a normal person just tried to randomly run a deficit like this, they'd probably be pulling their hair out and be at their own throat with how uncomfortable they would be. But I really do feel like really good right now. I mean, I feel so good that I decided to make a video. I don't usually want to make a video. It's kind of like only do it when I feel like it and I'm in a good mood, which I am. All right, so I got 106 grams of net carbs. So in reality, I actually got more than 106 grams of carbohydrates today. But a lot of food diary tools now will do this thing where they'll show you your net carbohydrates. And net carbohydrates are essentially just carbohydrates minus fiber, because technically speaking, and I don't know why, because I'm not a doctor and I don't have a degree in this stuff, but fiber is often counted as a carbohydrate, or at least dietary fiber is a carbohydrate, but your body doesn't actually break it down and use it for nutrition. It just passes through your intestines and gets pooped out. But it's actually really good for you because the fiber it provides like a home for bacteria as it passes through your gut. So it's surface area, bacteria gets all up in the fiber and reproduces and eats things, and it does really good stuff for you. There's a lot of research coming out about your gut biome and how your gut biome can affect your mood, your energy levels, your fertility, millions of things. We don't actually know what your gut biome is good for. All we know is that it's something that Western medicine hasn't really paid attention to until very recently. And so we still don't really know what the gut biome is all about. But I noticed a few years ago when I took antibiotics and my system got flushed out from the antibiotics that I became lactose intolerant, which I'm still recovering from. And some other bad things happened, like my farts started smelling insanely bad. I was having trouble digesting all sorts of foods. And what's going on here is I highly suspect what happened was that the penicillin or whatever I was taking killed almost all of the bacteria in my gut biome. And that bacteria is crucial because your body digests food in your small intestine. And what we learn in biology is that when food gets to your large intestine, most of what's going on there is the moisture is getting sucked out. But the nutrition class I took in college said that that's primarily what goes on in the large intestine, and there isn't so much digestion going on in the large intestine anymore. No, that's what the small intestine is for. It's for taking the food that you eat plus the bile from your stomach and that other whatever organ makes the bile, and that's where the digestion goes on. Well, actually, there's a lot of digestion that goes on in your large intestine. But it's aided by bacteria, the bacteria in your gut biome. So for example, people that are lactose intolerant don't have a lot of bacteria in their large intestine, which is called like Acidophilus acobacus, or I can't remember. Just look up Acidophilus lactose intolerance and you'll find that there is a type of bacteria, a single-celled organism, that lives in your gut, and it consumes lactose, which is a protein in milk. And people who cannot process lactose, I don't remember why, but it just makes you bloat and get really gassy. So if you have a lot of acidophilus in your gut, then they will eat the lactose protein in the milk and dairy, and you won't fart like crazy. And so I've been basically eating lots of dairy for the last year now, and I've actually mostly gotten rid of my lactose intolerance. I think I was at the point where if I had a cup of milk, I was shitting myself. And now I can have cups of milk and yogurt and all sorts of dairy, and I'm usually fine. I really have to eat a ton of dairy now if I want to have a lactose intolerant reaction. That's keyword for sitting on the toilet. And I kind of knew what I was doing. I did the research and I found out about this gut biome thing, and I said, you know what, I'm going to eat dairy even though it's going to suck, and it's taken like 10 months, but I've essentially built back lactose tolerance, not intolerance. I've built back my lactose tolerance. So if you aren't lactose intolerant and you do consume dairy, remember not to go for a whole year without eating dairy, because you might end up just lactose intolerant. Because if you don't eat lactose, then the gut biome, the bacteria in your gut biome that eat the lactose will eventually wither up and die. They'll get crowded out by other bacteria that eat the stuff that you're eating, and you won't have that much bacteria in your gut biome that eat lactose, and you'll become lactose intolerant. But you can reverse it by eating lots of dairy, because if you eat lots of dairy, then the bacteria that eat the lactose will eventually populate your gut biome, and then you'll be fine. So anyway, long talk about fiber. The fiber helps the bacteria in your gut biome just do their thing. So that's one of the reasons why it's recommended that you get 35 grams of fiber per day. I like to often get 70 or 80 grams of fiber, just because I basically eat vegetarian most days, not out of some ethical or moral reason, but just because from a low calorie standpoint, it is much easier to get a calorie deficit while remaining satiated on vegetables than it is when you have meat in your diet. Pretty much all meats in general are very calorie dense. So, gold weighs a lot. If you have a little bit of gold in your hand, it weighs you down. It's like lead. Whereas if you have a feather pillow in your hand, the feather pillow doesn't weigh a lot, but it takes up a lot of space. So I could have a little chunk of gold in my hand here, and I could have a pillow in my hand here, and the pillow is going to be, this big, and the chunk of gold is going to be this big. But even though the chunk of gold is so much smaller than the pillow, the chunk of gold is going to weigh me down much more than the pillow will. And this is essentially meat, which is like gold in this example, versus the pillow, which is like vegetables. Now, don't think that meat is more valuable than vegetables because gold is more valuable than a pillow. No, we're approaching this purely from a calorie density standpoint. Pretty much all meats are pretty dense in calories. Some meats are more dense than in calories, mostly due to their fat content. That's one of the reasons why it's healthy to get low fat. I mean, I don't know why I'm quoting low fat, but that's why low fat meats are often seen as more healthy, just because they're less calorie dense, which means that you're not going to gain as much weight from eating them. But you can get all of your vitamins and minerals and nutrients from plants. There are some vitamins and minerals that you will have a hard time getting if you avoid meat, like vitamin B12 and this other vitamin called niacin. There's a few other things, whereas if you just have a little bit of red meat in your diet, you'll get all of those minerals and nutrients and vitamins like really easily. So sometimes I'll just have red meat to kind of hedge my bets when it comes to calorie deficiencies, because since I'm often running deficits like this, nutrient deficiencies are something that I'm always thinking about, because I have seen people become injured due to excessive dieting and get like organ damage. So I am very aware of that. I don't want that to happen to me. So I do make sure to have red meat once in a while. I do make sure to have like fish, fatty foods every now and then. But you don't really need to do it all the time, which is why today it's okay to have days like this where I'm just eating salads and yogurt in a bowl. All right, so that's my rant about carbohydrates. Fats. So I probably already said this in a video. There's this YouTuber that I really like named Paul Revelia. And Paul Revelia is a IBFP pro coach. He trains athletes for bodybuilding competitions. He's trained hundreds of athletes to show readiness and have them go on the stage, put on spray tans and waxes and bikinis and strut their stuff on the stage, often winning awards. And Paul Revelia himself has done bodybuilding competitions and won awards. And so I've consumed a lot of his content. I've watched a lot of his videos. I really like his attitude. He seems like a great guy. Maybe it's all a show and he's just a personality, and in real life he could be a total jerk, but who cares? I'm never going to meet him. I love his YouTube stuff. And one of the things he says is that he likes to never put his athletes on less than 40 grams of fat a day. And he says the reason why is that your body needs something like 40 grams of fat every day just to synthesize hormones. So what would happen if you didn't get 40 grams of fat a day? Well, I'll tell you, because I've done it before unwittingly. Well, your libido drops off a cliff, which, libido, when I say libido, people think of sex, but libido is actually a philosophical term. I mean, it is a physiological concept as well, but philosophers sometimes use the word libido when they talk about one's drive to go out into the world and just do stuff, and go after things. That go get 'em attitude, that actually comes from your libido in the philosophical sense. But in the real sense, because I'm sure you might not actually care about philosophy, although I do, that's what my college degree is in, but your dopamine levels influence whether or not you literally want to leave your house and go do things. If somebody is depressed or they have very low dopamine levels, they'll be content to just sit catatonically on their couch and do nothing, not even watch TV. I was listening to a podcast by Huberman. I can't remember his first name, but Huberman, and he said that, I don't know, in the 90s there was a disaster where a bunch of druggie addicts got a bad batch of meth or something like meth, and it killed the dopamine receptors in their brain, so they could not actually be affected by dopamine. Guess what happened to them? They all died. Yeah, they all died. But they didn't die instantly. What happened was they stopped, like their will to live just disappeared And they didn't go and kill themselves, but they just sat around all day, literally doing nothing, not talking, not moving. They were capable, but they wouldn't do it. And so they all died. I mean, they were under clinical supervision, so I don't know how they died, but they all died. You need dopamine. You need libido. If you don't have dopamine and you don't have libido, you're not going to chase goals. You're not going to have goals. You're not going to go for your career. You're not going to date. You're not going to want to see friends. You're not going to want to have hobbies. You're just going to end up suicidal and who knows what. So point is you want hormone production. You want your endocrine system to be producing hormones, and that's why I always make sure to get 35 to 40 grams of fat per day, because that's what Paul Revelia sets his minimum at, and he has people cutting crazy hard to get to 10% or less body fat so they can compete on a bodybuilder stage. And so I say, you know what? If 40 grams is the minimum for these freakish bodybuilders who are, less than 1% of the population, I mean, these people are insane freaks when it comes to physiques, then hey, it's a good target for me. So that's why I got 37 grams of fat. And you really don't have to try to get fat in your diet. It really will just happen. You have to try pretty hard not to get fat in your diet. I mean, let's take a look at what I ate today. 3 salads and a bowl of non-fat yogurt. I had some reduced fat milk in here and some reduced fat milk in the coffee. So with a whole bunch of salads and vegetables and non-fat and reduced fat products, I still managed to get 37 grams of fat a day. So you really don't need to worry about fat. Fat will just come into your diet. Just like net carbs. Could you imagine if I ate rice or pasta or bread? My net carbs would be double or triple what it is right now. This is 100 grams of net carbs on 3 salads. These salads, by the way, they're not a lot of net carbs. A lot of the carbohydrates in that kale, that leafy green, lettuce offshoot, it's fiber. So I still managed to get over 100 grams of net carbs on that. So it's really not difficult to get net carbs and fat in your diet, at least if you're in America. What is tricky is the protein. I've definitely had some cheat days in the last month. And I've noticed that I'll hit like 3,000 or 4,000, even 5,000 calories for the day. Just going to pastry shops and having delicious hamburgers and omelets and pancakes, whatever. I'll hit like 4,000 or 5,000 calories in a day. And remember, my whole body only needs 1,850 to exist. So that's like 2.5 days worth of food in a single day. So I've had days like that in the last month where I don't even get 100 grams of protein. I get like 70 grams of protein. So unless you actually pay attention to protein, you won't get what's recommended by a lot of bodybuilding handbooks, gymnastics, just like athlete recommendations. You really have to be cognizant of your protein intake if being athletic is important to you and having muscle at all is important to you. Also, if you're getting older, then senescence, cellular senescence starts happening and your muscle will break down. It's harder to maintain muscle. So then even if you're not a bodybuilder or an athlete or anything, if you're just old, you also need to pay attention to your protein intake. So I'm in my 30s. So for me, it's more of the athlete reasoning. I just want to make sure I'm getting enough protein to maintain and build muscle. And so I can keep doing the things I want to do, like running 12 miles a day. But the way that I came up with this number, so my number is actually 90. And the way that it's 91 specifically. So I don't really have a goal for net carbs. I want to make sure I get at least 50 net carbs a day, because once you drop below 50 net carbs, you start running the risk of going into ketosis. And I actually wouldn't care if I did go into ketosis, but whenever I go into ketosis, my body goes through an uncomfortable shift. It takes like 6 to 8 hours. And during those 6 to 8 hours when my body is shifting into ketosis, it kind of sucks a little bit. I just don't like it. It's not pleasant. So I'd rather avoid going into ketosis unless I specifically want to go into ketosis. So to avoid going into ketosis, I just make sure that I get at least 50 net grams of carbs a day. If I want to go into ketosis, then I just make sure I get maybe like 20 grams of net carbs in a day. I think if I got 20 grams of net carbs in a day, I would definitely go into ketosis, 20 or less. That's a general rule of thumb. If you're trying to do keto, you get 20 or less net carbs in a day, you'll be in or you'll go into ketosis. The fat, I got that from Paul Revelia, the bodybuilder trainer. So basically no target here, a minimum target that I don't even have to think about here. But for the protein, that one is super important. So I basically build everything around the protein goal. Now this is actually 91 grams of protein for me, a 5'7" male. That might not actually seem like a lot, depending on your background, depending on your knowledge and education. You might think that 91 grams of protein is chump change and that you need way more. So let me tell you how I came up with this number, because 91 grams of protein is actually still probably more than I need. All right, so here's how I did it. So there's a formula that's used in a lot of medical studies, white papers, researchers, and it's a formula used in a lot of bodybuilding handbooks, physique sculpting guides, just general fitness, bodybuilding, athlete knowledge has a formula roughly like this. It's you take your lean body mass, which is your body mass that's not fat, and, well, presumably not bone, but I don't know how you would calculate that. Anyway, you take your lean body mass in pounds, and you multiply that by about 0.8. So, and that's how many grams of protein you want in a day. So let's say you weigh 120 pounds. No. I have to make this as easy as possible for my tiny little pea-sized brain. Let's say you weigh 100 pounds, okay? And let's say that you're 25% body fat, because that's pretty reasonable for a lot of people. Then that means that you have 75 pounds of lean body mass. Now, if you have 75 pounds of lean body mass, then you would want to multiply that by 0.8 or 4/5. And that would be how many grams of protein you should get in a day. So for me, I weigh, 140, 132. I think last time I calculated this, I'd come off of a 2-day fast. And so I was dehydrated, fasted for like at least 54 hours, and I weighed in at 32 pounds. So I said, hey, that's my weight, 132 pounds. And that was at 14% body fat. So I multiplied 132 times 0.86, because if I'm 14% body fat, that means I'm 86% lean body mass. So 0.86 times 132, and then take that and multiply it by 0.8 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass. That gives me 91 grams of protein per day. Now, in reality, I've heard researchers from studies say that you can get by with like 0.7 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass per day. So the 0.8 is still a little higher than I need it to be. But here's the thing. Yes, you could go way higher on the protein. I could be doing 140 grams of protein per day, and I've been doing that for a while. But you don't need it. I don't need it. I don't need that much protein. If I'm going to do a lifting day, sure, I'll add some more protein. I'll add like another 20 or 30 grams of protein throughout the day, because I'll say, hey, today I'm lifting. I'm going to be doing a lot of muscle breakdown. I want to avoid catabolism. So let's get some more protein in there. But for a normal day where I'm just running and doing my desk job, I just need like a reasonable amount, which is 91 grams. And then today I got 101 grams. So I overshot my goal without really even trying. So if you think about what kind of foods you're eating, then you can get the protein that you need, and you can get the nutrients that you need so that you won't have a deficiency. And so anyways, this all brings us back to the formula. So, it seems kind of simple here, but I just talked for at least half an hour about all of the thinking behind this here. So there's a lot that goes into this. But at the end of the day, again, it just boils down to some really simple arithmetic. So assuming that I'm not killing myself and I'm actually doing this correctly, I'm eating the right kinds of food, then yeah, it works out to a humongous deficit. And theoretically, I would lose like 3.5 pounds a week. That's crazy. It's a lot. One more thing. I kept mentioning earlier that it took me a year to get to the point where I could run a deficit like this without going crazy. So here's why I'm able to have negative 1,825 calories, and I'm able to eat the same amount of calories as like a 5-foot tall girl. Okay, I ate the same amount of calories as like a 5-foot tall girl should eat in a day. And then I ran 12 miles, and I'm not feeling terrible. I'm feeling good, actually. So the way that I did this was several tricks. So 1, intermittent fasting, and 2, high volume, filling whole foods. So first, intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting, also known as time-restricted eating, you can look it up. There's a million people talking about it. It's a fad, but it also works. It's essentially recognizing that hunger is not really real, depending on how you look at it, and it's more like signals that your body sends at you on a rhythm, just like your circadian rhythm for sleeping. Your body will spike the hunger hormone, which is called ghrelin, at predictable times. Let's say you do a desk job and every day at 12 food comes in. You might start noticing that at like 11:30 or 11:45 you start getting hungry, even if you're not thinking about food. And that's because your body subconsciously gets trained to eat at a certain time and expect food at a certain time, and so it will actually ramp up production of the food hormone, ghrelin, and that will make you hungry. But should you be hungry? Do you need to eat? Probably not. Probably not. Because chances are you're probably not some bodybuilder that Paul Revelia just got down to 10% body fat. Chances are you got some body fat. Chances are you probably already ate that day. You already have all the nutrients and calories you need, and you don't need to eat. You probably could lose some weight, you fatty. But your body creates ghrelin, which makes you hungry, even if you don't actually need to eat. And so if you practice intermittent fasting, then you can essentially train your body not to be hungry until a certain time of the day, which is pretty nice because, like I said, you don't really need to eat anyway. So it's kind of nice if you don't feel hungry, then you're not going to be uncomfortable when you're not eating. So for the last, half a year, maybe, I haven't been eating until about 12 o'clock. Most weeks, I never eat before 12 o'clock. If I'm going to go on a date or see some friends, then yeah, we might grab breakfast and I eat before 12 o'clock. Whatever. It doesn't kill me. But I pretty much never feel hungry before 12 o'clock now. And when I do, I have some tea, maybe I chew some gum, I have some coffee. But that's pretty rare. Most days I can wake up and do my thing, even go for a run, a 6-mile run, and I didn't eat anything until 12. I went for a 6-mile run at like 8 a.m., and then I worked until 12 and I didn't eat. And then I didn't actually end up eating until 1 o'clock because I was preparing a salad. So if you practice intermittent fasting, you can essentially get rid of a lot of your hunger feelings until your feeding window starts. Now, once my feeding window starts, and then I start feeling hungry. But that's better than feeling hungry immediately when I wake up in the morning. Because for me, I've found once I start eating, I want to eat every 2 to 3 hours until I go to sleep. And so if I can take the number of hours that I'm continuously eating and shrink that window of time by not starting eating until 12 o'clock or so, that means I have a higher chance of eating less in that day and hitting my goals. So I had 4 meals here. These meals span from like 1 o'clock to 9 o'clock, so 1 meal every 2 hours or so, which is how I like to do things, I suppose. But if I'd started eating at 9 a.m., there'd probably be another meal in here, and then that deficit wouldn't be as big, although it's still freaking massive. But anyway, so intermittent fasting is one way that I make myself not go crazy while doing something like this. The other way that I don't go crazy while getting a 1,800 calorie deficit is high volume, low calorie whole foods. So a salad, this is more than half of an entire mixing bowl full of food to fork spoonfuls of and munch on and crunch on. I'll sit in front of the TV, I'll watch YouTube streamers, whatever, and I'm enjoying my salad, and it'll take me 15 or 20 minutes to eat one of these salads. And these salads have a piece of toast with butter and jam has more calories than these salads. You think I'm exaggerating? Your average slice of bread is at least 100 calories. Let's say you put a teaspoon of butter on there. That's at least 35 calories. Now we're at 135 calories. Now take some jam. Probably 40 calories right there. Now we're up to 170 calories. Okay, 170 calories. Not quite 200, but let's say you put a little more butter or a little bit of honey, maybe some cinnamon sugar, whatever. Get a really nice piece of toast. If you do avocado toast, 2 slices of toast with an avocado on top of it is going to be more calories than this dessert bowl. You're going to be hitting 500 plus calories. So if you want to lose weight, you got to learn about calories. You got to learn about calorie density. Anyway, these are very low calorie density. Big bowl of essentially lettuce. It's kale. Kale is just an offshoot of lettuce. It's lettuce that was selectively bred to be leafy or something. Or cabbage. I think they're all cabbage. Like lettuce, broccoli. I think they're all just coming from cabbage genetically. But salads, who knew, are low calories. Yeah, everyone knows salads are low calories. The dressing that I made, 100 calories per pop, and it's got a bunch of protein, like at least 10 grams of protein. Also super low calorie. It's like 108 grams of salad dressing for about 100 calories. A lot of flavor, not that expensive. So essentially waiting until 12 o'clock to eat through intermittent fasting, and then eating meals that take a lot of time to eat are highly filling because it's a lot of volume for a small amount of calories. And then to boot, they're nutritious, which probably doesn't help too much with hunger, but I'm going to pretend it does. And that was at least 2 pounds of food right there. And yet it was only 458 calories. A piece of steak will run you like 600 calories alone. If you're going to have steak and potatoes, you're probably going to hit 1,000 calories for that meal, just for steak and potatoes. So, I mean, if you learn about the calorie density of foods, and then you learn about the nutrition that they provide, then you can put together a meal plan like this that won't make you nutrient deficient, will give you the protein and macronutrient goals that you need, and won't put you at risk of nutrient deficiency. And then you'll end up at the end of the day not wanting to pull your hair out. And so let's get back to the meme here. Theoretically, if I were to eat like this every day, I would lose 3.65 pounds per week just on calories in, calories out. Not fasting, not doing some insane diet, just doing 2 hours of exercise a day. Not some insane amount of exercise, at least to me. Running 12 miles for me it's good, but it's not insane. I've had 18-mile plus days. So yeah, if you wanna lose weight fast, then just spend 10 months of your life researching this stuff like crazy, and run as hard as you can, as much as you can, until you can get to the point where you can run 12 miles every freaking day, and then you'll be capable of something like this. I don't think most people can do this, but I do think most people are capable if they put their minds to it, and they learn everything I've learned and then some, and they commit themselves to healthy living and exercise. I think just about any human is capable of this, but it takes time. It's taken me over 10 months to learn all of this stuff and put it into practice. And a lot of that includes finding out what works for me, because everyone's diet is going to be different. Things are not going to work for Sally, but they are going to work for Bob. For me, I tried not everything, but I tried a lot. I tried OMAD, I tried keto, I tried fasting. At the end of the day, for me, it's calorie counting with giant salads. That's what works for me. Might not work for you. Maybe it will, it might not. But, to that conundrum, to that question, I say, figure it out. Just figure it out. It took me 10 months to get here. It was trial and error. It's going to take you trial and error. But you're not going to get there unless you start. So, if you take something from this video, maybe it should be that today is as good a day as any to start experimenting, learning new things, finding out, hey, what works for you, and you might just end up like this. And by the way, I could do more than this. If I really wanted to, I could do more than this, because yeah, I ran 12 miles today. I could have run more. I could have lifted weights. I could have also ridden my bike. If this was a weekend, I could have ran in the morning, done a 2-hour mountain bike ride, ran in the evening. I could have eaten less. This is 458 calories. I didn't need to make this 458 calories. I definitely could have cut some calories out of here. It didn't have to be 458. I could have gotten, if I took 200 calories off of here and I did 2 hours of mountain biking, 2 hours of mountain biking would be at least 400 calories, and 200 calories off of there would be 600 calories. That would be a 2,400 calorie deficit. I could have done all this and fasted. I have done a half marathon fasted before. I did this month or last month, 2 days in a row, back to back. I didn't eat a single calorie because I was fasting, so no food. And I ran a half marathon both days. So in 2 days, I ran 26 miles and I ate nothing. Zero, nada, zilch. Now, was I feeling great on the third day? Not really, but I wasn't dying either. I've grown accustomed to fasting. I can do it when I want to. Eating is always better. That's why I prefer to do this. I would rather eat and run an insane amount of deficit and exercise a lot than fast. I think in the long run, this is much more maintainable and much more sustainable, because when I fast, yeah, I can run 2 half marathons 2 days in a row, but on day 3, my running performance just drops off a cliff because all of my glycogen, that's your sugar stores, it's depleted, and then I'm only running on fat. So it's essentially like, imagine if you're running and then all of a sudden the wind just starts blowing in your face and you just feel slowed down. That's what it feels like to me on day 3 of fasting and consistently running. It just feels like suddenly the air is really thick and I'm running. It's just harder. It's more difficult. Climbing hills, I get winded faster. Whereas if I eat, even if I'm on a negative calorie deficit, the food is keeping my glycogen stores up. And so I can exercise every day and feel just fine. So from a quality of life point of view, I much prefer eating and having a deficit than fasting. Though when I do have my rest days, I will fast on my rest days, because if I'm not exercising, why not fast? Plus, fasting actually has recovery benefits. Your body's not using energy to process food, so it can actually use energy that you've stored up to do other things, like repair your muscles and tissue and such. And if you think I'm full of crap when I say that, just go look up what happens when you fast. If you fast for 10 days, for example, scar tissue can go away. So I've heard of drug addicts, like recovering drug addicts, go and do an extended 2-week fast and then scars go away. Which, if you're a certain type of drug addict, you might have all sorts of scars up your arm from shooting up heroin or whatever. So making those scars go away might be something you'd want to do, because you might not want people to see those scars and judge you. So fasting is pretty popular with recovering drug addicts. Although I'm not a recovering drug addict, I just want to lose weight and look good and feel good. That wraps up this video. I hope you liked my meme.